She was just a pet store owner until her first shot made every instructor go silent. The silence lasted exactly 7 seconds. 7 seconds where 23 veteran shooting instructors, men who had trained Navy SEALs and Olympic champions, stood frozen in disbelief. Because the woman who had just placed 3 perfect shots through the center of a target at 200 meters wasn't supposed to be capable of holding a rifle, let alone firing one with surgical precision. She was just Anya Hernandez, the quiet European girl who sold hamsters and dog food for a living. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. If you're enjoying this, don't miss out. Subscribe now for more. Anya Hernandez arrived at Precision Valley Shooting Academy at exactly 8:47 a.m. on what promised to be another brilliantly sunny Tuesday morning in rural Colorado. She parked her beat-up Honda Civic between 2 massive pickup trucks, the contrast as stark as everything else about her presence at this elite training facility. At 26, she stood barely 5'4", with gentle brown eyes that held the kind of warmth you'd expect from someone who spent her days caring for abandoned puppies and explaining the dietary needs of guinea pigs to concerned children. The irony wasn't lost on her as she walked past the academy's impressive glass facade, her worn sneakers silent on the polished concrete. This was the same woman who, just 8 hours earlier, had been coaxing a terrified rescue cat out from behind bags of premium dog food in her small pet store in downtown Boulder. Now she was about to enter a world where precision, power, and intimidation ruled supreme. The Academy's lobby buzzed with the kind of testosterone-fueled energy that Anya had learned to navigate carefully throughout her life. Instructors with military bearing discussed training protocols while examining high-end rifles that cost more than she made in 3 months. Students, mostly men in their 30s and 40s, compared equipment and shared stories of previous shooting experiences. Everyone seemed to belong, except for the petite European woman clutching a basic enrollment packet and wearing a faded university sweatshirt. "You sure you're in the right place, miss?" asked the receptionist, a weathered man named Frank, whose questioning tone carried the same skepticism Anya had encountered her entire life. "This is advanced marksmanship training, not the community center down the road." Quote, "I'm here for the competitive shooting program," Anya replied softly, her slight accent adding an almost musical quality to words that somehow felt foreign in this environment. "I registered last month under Anya Hernandez." Frank's bushy eyebrows rose as he scrolled through his computer. "Here you are. Says here you've got no prior formal training, no military background, no hunting experience." He looked up with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle. "You sure about this? Most folks start with basic safety courses." Anya had heard variations of this conversation throughout her life. Too small for competitive sports in school. Too quiet for leadership roles in college. Too gentle for anything requiring toughness or aggression. She built a successful pet store business precisely because it played to people's expectations of who she was supposed to be. Caring, nurturing, unthreatening. Safe. "I'm sure," she said, accepting the paperwork that would change everything. The first challenge came during equipment check. While other participants displayed custom rifles with specialized scopes and modifications, Anya approached the rental counter. The instructor on duty, a former Marine named Rodriguez, looked at her request with barely concealed amusement. "Ma'am, these rifles have significant recoil." "They're not designed for," he paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing, "for someone of your, build. Maybe we could start you with something smaller. We've got a .22 that might be more manageable." Around her, Anya could hear the whispered conversations of other participants. Comments about insurance liability and whether the academy had lowered its standards. Someone mentioned that this was supposed to be an elite program, not a place where anyone could just walk in off the street. She accepted the standard rifle Rodriguez offered, a decision that prompted more skeptical glances. The weapon felt substantial in her hands, its weight and balance somehow familiar, despite what her file indicated about her experience level. As she carried it toward the indoor range for initial assessment, she caught fragments of conversation that followed her like shadows. "Hope she doesn't hurt herself," muttered one participant to his partner. "Seen plenty of wannabes think they can handle serious equipment." "Poor thing, probably watched too many action movies," another replied. "Someone should probably stay close in case she needs help." Quote, The assessment range was designed to establish baseline capabilities for each participant. Simple targets at various distances, basic shooting positions, fundamental accuracy measurements. Nothing that would challenge experienced shooters, but enough to separate serious candidates from those who had overestimated their abilities. Anya took her assigned position at lane 7, flanked by participants who radiated confidence and experience. The man to her left, introducing himself as Detective Morrison from Denver PD, had brought his own custom rifle and was discussing modifications with the range instructor. The woman to her right, Captain Sarah Chen, mentioned casually that she just returned from competitive shooting nationals. As the first assessment began, Anya's hands remained steady despite the curious stares and barely suppressed skepticism surrounding her. She'd spent 26 years being underestimated, had built a life around managing other people's low expectations, but she'd also spent those years preparing for something that no one knew about, developing skills that existed completely outside the neat little box where everyone had placed her. The range instructor's voice echoed through the facility. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Precision Valley. Today we establish your baseline capabilities. Those who demonstrate adequate skill will continue with advanced training. Those who don't," he didn't need to finish the sentence. As participants began taking their practice shots, the familiar sounds of precision shooting filled the air. Anya closed her eyes for just a moment, letting the controlled chaos wash over her. Around her, experienced shooters demonstrated their competence with controlled breathing and steady hands. She opened her eyes, raised her rifle, and prepared to show them that sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most to say. 3 weeks earlier, Anya's alarm had buzzed at 5:30 a.m., the same time it had every morning for the past 4 years. She'd risen in her small apartment above Paws and Claws pet store, made coffee, and begun the ritual that defined her public life. Feeding schedules for 37 animals, inventory checks, preparing for another day of being exactly who everyone expected her to be. The pet store occupied the ground floor of a converted Victorian house in Boulder's historic district, its hand-painted sign and flower boxes creating the perfect impression of gentle domesticity. Inside, the morning sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating rows of carefully maintained habitats, and the kind of organized chaos that only comes from genuine care for living creatures. Anya moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. The rescued cockatiel Pablo required special dietary supplements. The 3-legged cat Duchess needed her medication mixed into wet food. The tank of tropical fish demanded precise temperature monitoring. Each task performed with the methodical attention to detail that had made her store a trusted resource for pet owners throughout Boulder County. "Morning, Anya," called Mrs. Chen, her first customer of the day and owner of 2 elderly beagles. "How's our girl doing today?" "Wonderful as always," Anya replied, her voice carrying the warm patience that customers had come to expect. "How are Buster and Belle adjusting to their new diet?" These were the conversations that filled her days. Discussions about flea prevention, advice on introducing cats to new environments, recommendations for the best toys for hyperactive puppies. Anya had become the neighborhood expert on animal behavior, nutrition, and care. Her gentle manner and genuine knowledge had built a loyal customer base who saw her as exactly what she appeared to be, a caring young woman who had found her calling in nurturing creatures. But what none of them knew was how Anya spent her evenings. After closing the store at 7 p.m., after ensuring every animal was comfortable and secure, after tallying the day's receipts and planning tomorrow's tasks, Anya would drive 40 minutes into the mountains to a private shooting range owned by a retired gunsmith named Viktor Petrov. Viktor, a gruff Russian immigrant who had little patience for small talk, had become the most important teacher in her life for reasons that no one could have guessed. "You are late," Viktor would growl when she arrived, though she was never actually late. "Rifle is waiting, ammunition is expensive, we do not waste time." The relationship had begun by accident 2 years earlier. Anya had been hiking in the national forest when she'd heard the distinctive crack of precision shooting. Following the sound out of curiosity, she'd discovered Viktor's hidden range, a collection of targets and equipment tucked into a valley that few people ever visited. "You are lost," Viktor had declared when she'd emerged from the tree line. "I was following the sound," Anya had replied honestly. "I've never heard anything quite like it." What followed was the most unlikely mentorship imaginable. "Viktor, suspicious of everyone and trusting of no one, had somehow recognized something in the quiet pet store owner that others missed entirely. Perhaps it was her genuine curiosity about precision and technique. Maybe it was her willingness to listen without judgment. Or possibly it was the way she approached his equipment, with the same careful respect she showed the animals in her care. Shooting is not about violence, Victor had explained during their first lesson. It is about control, about breathing, about making mind and body work as single machine. Most people, they think shooting is about power. They are wrong. Shooting is about precision. Under Victor's demanding tutelage, Anya had discovered capabilities that surprised even her. Her small hands, which others saw as a disadvantage, provided exceptional stability and control. Her naturally calm demeanor translated into the kind of focused concentration that serious marksmanship required. Her background in animal behavior had taught her patience and observation skills that proved invaluable in reading wind conditions and calculating distances. 3 evenings a week for 2 years, Anya had trained in secret. She'd learned to control her breathing, to calculate ballistics, to maintain focus under pressure. Victor had pushed her through advanced techniques that most recreational shooters never encountered. Long-distance precision shooting, moving targets, adverse weather conditions, multiple shooting positions. You have gift, Victor had told her after 18 months of training. Not just steady hands. You have mind that sees patterns, that calculates without thinking. But gift means nothing without discipline. The discipline had been the hardest part. Hours of practice with basic fundamentals before Victor would allow her to attempt advanced techniques. Endless repetition of breathing exercises, trigger control, sight alignment, days when her shoulders ached from holding positions, when her eyes burned from hours of concentrated focus. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, Anya had transformed from a curious beginner into something remarkable. Her accuracy had progressed from decent to exceptional to genuinely extraordinary. Victor, who praised no one, had begun making comments that bordered on amazement. "I have trained many shooters," he'd said one evening as they cleaned rifles in the fading mountain light. "Police, military, competitive shooters. You are different. You do not fight the rifle. You become part of rifle." The improvement had been measured in increasingly difficult challenges. Targets at longer distances, smaller bullseyes, challenging weather conditions. Each success had built upon the previous one, until Anya found herself capable of feats that would have seemed impossible when she'd first stumbled into Victor's hidden range. "Why do you not compete?" Victor had asked recently. "You are ready for advanced training, real competition." It was a question Anya had been avoiding. Competition meant exposure, meant revealing capabilities that existed completely outside the life she'd carefully constructed. It meant risking the comfortable anonymity that had protected her from the kind of expectations and pressures she'd spent years avoiding. But it also meant the possibility of proving something to herself, of discovering what she was truly capable of when given the opportunity to demonstrate her skills against serious competition. The enrollment packet for Precision Valley Shooting Academy had sat on her kitchen table for 3 weeks before she'd finally completed it. The academy was known throughout the region as the most elite training facility for serious marksmen. Their advanced program had produced Olympic competitors, military specialists, and record-holding precision shooters. It was also exactly the kind of environment where a small pet store owner would be completely out of place. We've invested considerable effort in bringing you this story. If you find it engaging, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, let's return to the narrative. The assessment results were posted the following morning on a bulletin board that had become the focal point of anxious anticipation. Participants clustered around the list, searching for their names among those who would advance to the Academy's prestigious advanced program. Anya stood at the back of the group, her heart racing as conversations erupted around her. "Morrison, you're in slot 1, Detective Morrison announced to his partner with satisfaction. "Scored 92% accuracy." "Chen made the cut too," someone else called out. 94%. Impressive for a first assessment. Quote, one by one, the successful candidates celebrated their advancement. These were the shooters who would receive specialized training from the Academy's master instructors, who would have access to the most advanced equipment and techniques. The program that could transform good marksmen into exceptional ones. When Anya finally reached the board, she found her name listed with a score that made her breath catch. 97% accuracy. Only one other participant had scored higher. But instead of celebration, she felt a growing sense of unease as she noticed the notation beside her name. See Instructor Williams for placement discussion. The meeting took place in Williams' office an hour later. The head instructor sat behind a desk covered with assessment reports, his weathered face serious as he reviewed Anya's file. Williams had 30 years of military experience and a reputation for developing some of the finest precision shooters in the country. His recommendation could open doors to opportunities that most marksmen only dreamed of. "Ms. Hernandez," Williams began, tapping her assessment report with his pen. "Your performance yesterday was unexpected." "Thank you, sir," Anya replied, uncertain whether this was praise or concern. "Your accuracy scores place you in the top 3% of all candidates we've tested this year. Your technique shows remarkable consistency for someone with supposedly limited formal training." Williams paused, studying her with eyes that had evaluated thousands of shooters, which is exactly the problem. The words hit Anya like a physical blow. "Sir?" "The advanced program is designed for experienced marksmen looking to refine elite-level skills, law enforcement officers, military personnel, competitive shooters with extensive backgrounds. These are professionals who need advanced training for serious applications." Williams gestured toward the window overlooking the main training facility where other successful candidates were beginning their first advanced session. "What we're not equipped for is recreational shooters, regardless of their natural ability. The insurance liability alone." "I understand that my background is unconventional," Anya interrupted, her voice remaining steady despite the growing anger in her chest. "But my assessment scores demonstrate that I can handle the material." "Your scores demonstrate natural talent," Williams corrected. "But talent without proper foundation can be dangerous. The advanced program involves high-stress scenarios, precision shooting under pressure, techniques that require not just accuracy but judgment developed through real-world experience." The conversation continued for 15 minutes, but the outcome had been decided before Anya entered the office. Williams recommended that she enroll in the Academy's recreational shooting program, a weekend course designed for hobbyists and casual enthusiasts. The kind of training that would teach her to safely enjoy target shooting as a pleasant pastime. "You have genuine ability," Williams concluded, "but the advanced program simply isn't appropriate for someone in your situation. The recreational course will give you excellent fundamentals and plenty of opportunities to develop your skills in a more suitable environment." As Anya left the office, she passed the classroom where the advanced participants were receiving their first briefing. Through the open door, she could see Detective Morrison and Captain Chen taking notes as a master instructor discussed techniques for long-range precision shooting in adverse conditions, the same techniques Victor had been teaching her for 2 years. The recreational program meeting was held in a smaller classroom with folding chairs and basic equipment displays. The other participants were exactly what Williams had expected: middle-aged professionals looking for an interesting hobby, a few college students curious about competitive shooting, several retirees seeking new activities. Nice people with reasonable goals and appropriate expectations. "Welcome to Precision Valley's recreational shooting program," announced the instructor, a cheerful woman named Sandra, who immediately established the tone with her opening remarks. "We're here to have fun while learning safe, accurate shooting techniques. Our goal is to help you become competent recreational marksmen who can enjoy this wonderful sport responsibly." The curriculum was everything Williams had promised: comprehensive safety training, basic accuracy development, introductory techniques for various shooting positions. All valuable information presented at a pace designed for beginners who might never progress beyond casual weekend shooting. Anya sat through the orientation feeling like an actor playing the wrong role in someone else's script. Around her, participants asked earnest questions about equipment recommendations and safety protocols. Their enthusiasm was genuine, their goals realistic, their expectations perfectly aligned with what the program offered, but she couldn't stop thinking about the advanced classroom down the hall where real training was beginning. Techniques that could transform good shooters into exceptional ones. Challenges that would push skills to their absolute limits. The kind of education that Victor had told her she was ready for. "Any questions about the program structure?" Sandra asked, her smile encompassing the entire group. Anya raised her hand, Is there any possibility of advancement from recreational to advanced programs based on performance? Sandra's smile faltered slightly. Well, the programs are really designed for different types of participants with different goals. The advanced program requires specific qualifications and experience levels that recreational participants typically don't possess. Translation: once you're placed in the recreational box, you stay in the recreational box. Your capabilities matter less than your background, your performance less than your credentials. After the meeting, Anya lingered in the parking lot, watching through the facility's large windows as advanced participants worked with equipment she'd only seen in Victor's collection. Master instructors provided individualized guidance on techniques she'd been perfecting for months. The education she'd hoped to receive was happening 50 feet away, separated by an invisible barrier of assumptions and preconceptions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor. "How was first day at Fancy Academy?" Anya stared at the message, considering how to explain that her exceptional assessment scores had earned her placement in a program designed for people who wanted shooting to remain a hobby. That her 2 years of disciplined training under his demanding instruction had been dismissed as irrelevant to her situation. Instead, she typed back, "Learning experience. We'll tell you tonight." As she drove home through Boulder's afternoon traffic, Anya reflected on the familiar pattern that had defined her life. Excellence that was dismissed, capabilities that were questioned, potential that was redirected toward more appropriate goals. She'd achieved exactly what she'd set out to do, demonstrate that she belonged in the advanced program. But belonging, she was learning, required more than just ability. It required being the right kind of person with the right kind of background, pursuing the right kind of goals. Everything she'd never been, and everything she was tired of pretending she couldn't become. That evening, Victor's range felt like a sanctuary after the controlled disappointment of Precision Valley Academy. The familiar mountain air, the scent of gun oil and metal, the simple honesty of targets that didn't care about your background, only your ability to hit them consistently. "You look angry," Victor observed as Anya unpacked her equipment with more force than necessary. "Academy did not go as expected?" "They placed me in recreational shooting," Anya said, her voice tight with frustration, "despite scoring 97% on the assessment." Victor's weathered face showed no surprise. "And this surprises you? You thought they would see small woman who owns pet store and think, here is serious competitor?" "I thought they would see my scores and recognize ability." "Ability is luxury," Victor replied, beginning his ritual of equipment inspection. "First, they see what they expect to see. Then, maybe, they notice ability. Maybe." For the next 3 hours, Victor put Anya through the most demanding session they'd ever attempted. Targets at 300 meters in shifting wind conditions. Rapid transition shooting between multiple positions. Precision shooting with a timer counting down, simulating the pressure of competition. Every challenge was met with the kind of performance that would have impressed the master instructors at Precision Valley. Anya's breathing remained controlled under pressure. Her accuracy held steady despite the increased difficulty. Her transitions between positions were smooth and efficient. "You see," Victor said as they examined the targets by flashlight, "this is not recreational shooting. This is what they teach in their advanced program, except you do it better than most of their graduates." The targets told a story that assessment scores couldn't capture. Groups of shots clustered tightly around bullseyes that most recreational shooters would struggle to hit at all. Consistency that demonstrated not just talent, but disciplined training and systematic skill development. "Tomorrow, you go back to their recreational program," Victor continued. "You smile, you pretend to learn things you already know, you let them think they understand your limitations." "That's exactly what I've been doing my entire life," Anya protested. "Pretending to be less capable than I am so other people feel comfortable." "Yes, but this time, you use their comfort against them." Victor led her to a section of the range she'd never seen before, hidden behind a stand of pine trees. Here, the targets were set at distances that would challenge Olympic-level competitors. The equipment was specialized, designed for the kind of precision shooting that existed at the absolute highest levels of the sport. "I have been saving this for when you were ready," Victor explained. "These are challenges that separate good shooters from exceptional ones. Distances and conditions that test not just accuracy, but understanding of advanced ballistics, environmental factors, equipment limitations." What followed was a revelation. Anya discovered that her 2 years of training had prepared her for challenges she hadn't even known existed. She could calculate wind drift and bullet drop for shots that most people would consider impossible. Her understanding of ballistics and environmental factors had progressed far beyond recreational shooting into the realm of true precision marksmanship. "Your pet store training was more valuable than you know," Victor observed as Anya consistently hit targets at distances that would challenge experienced snipers. "Animals teach you to observe, to notice small changes in behavior and environment. These skills transfer to reading wind and weather." The session continued until well past midnight, with Victor introducing techniques and challenges that existed far beyond anything taught in Precision Valley's recreational program. Advanced positioning, shooting from unconventional angles, maintaining accuracy while moving between targets, precision shooting in low-light conditions. Each new challenge revealed capabilities that Anya hadn't known she possessed. Her accuracy remained exceptional even under the most demanding conditions. Her ability to adapt to new scenarios and equipment demonstrated the kind of advanced understanding that typically required years of competitive experience. "Why haven't you told me about this before?" Anya asked as they cleaned equipment in Victor's workshop. "Because you were not ready. Not technically ready. You have been technically ready for months, but not ready to understand what it means to have these capabilities." Victor paused in his methodical cleaning routine to study her with eyes that had seen exceptional shooters throughout his career. Most people who develop this level of skill, they do it through military training or competitive shooting programs. They have structure, recognition, opportunity to advance. You have developed same skills in secret, with no recognition, no opportunity. "That's the problem," Anya said. "I have the skills, but not the credentials." "No, that is your advantage. You have developed exceptional capabilities without anyone noticing. This means you can surprise people who think they know your limitations." Victor walked to a gun safe and retrieved a rifle that Anya had never seen before. Custom-built, precision-engineered, the kind of equipment that cost more than most people's cars. This is what serious competitive shooters use. What Olympic marksmen carry. What military specialists request for the most demanding applications. He handed her the rifle, and immediately Anya could feel the difference. The balance was perfect, the action smooth as silk, every component designed for absolute precision. When she raised it to her shoulder, it felt like an extension of her body. "Tomorrow you continue with recreational program," Victor said. "You learn what they want to teach you, you perform at level they expect, but every evening you come here and train with equipment and techniques that they would not believe you capable of handling." "What's the point, if I can never demonstrate these capabilities?" Victor smiled, the first time she'd seen genuine pleasure on his weathered features. "Who says you will never demonstrate them? Precision Valley Academy runs elimination tournament every year, open to all students from both recreational and advanced programs. Winner receives full scholarship to masterclass training and recommendation for national competitive team." The information hit Anya like a revelation. An opportunity to compete directly against the advanced program participants who had been deemed more qualified than her. A chance to demonstrate capabilities that her placement in recreational shooting was supposed to prevent her from developing. "When is this tournament?" she asked. 6 weeks. Time enough to prepare you for a level of competition that will surprise everyone, including yourself. As Anya drove home through the quiet mountain roads, she felt something shifting inside her. For 2 years, she'd been developing exceptional capabilities in secret, content to keep her skills hidden from a world that wouldn't know how to categorize them. Now, for the first time, she had a target that mattered. The pet store owner was about to show them what hidden excellence looked like when it finally had an opportunity to emerge from the shadows. The third week of Precision Valley's recreational program brought an unexpected complication that Anya hadn't anticipated. Her careful attempts to blend in with the other recreational participants were being undermined by performance that was increasingly difficult to hide. "Anya, could you demonstrate that breathing technique again?" asked Sandra, the recreational program instructor, during a Tuesday morning session. "Your consistency is really quite remarkable." The request drew attention from other participants who had begun to notice that the quiet pet store owner consistently outperformed everyone in the group. Her targets showed the kind of groupings that suggested far more experience than her file indicated. "It's probably just beginner's luck," Anya replied, attempting to deflect the growing scrutiny, but even as she said it, she knew the explanation was wearing thin. James Patterson, a retired engineer who had quickly emerged as the most competitive member of their group, studied her latest target with obvious puzzlement. "That's the fourth session in a row you've shot better than 90% accuracy. That's not luck, that's skill." The observation prompted murmurs of agreement from other participants. During their lunch break, Anya overheard conversations that made her increasingly uncomfortable about the attention her performance was generating. "There's something she's not telling us about her background," whispered Carol Martinez, a nurse who had joined the program to try a new hobby. "Nobody shoots that consistently without serious training." "Maybe she's had military experience she didn't mention," replied Tom Chen, whose brother was Captain Chen in the advanced program, "or competitive shooting background that didn't show up in her application." The speculation might have remained harmless gossip if not for an incident during the fourth week that brought Anya's abilities to the attention of people beyond the recreational program. The advanced and recreational groups shared the same facility but typically trained during different hours. However, a scheduling conflict forced both programs to use the range simultaneously, creating the first opportunity for direct comparison between the supposedly different skill levels. Master Instructor Williams was conducting an advanced technique demonstration for his elite students when Sandra's recreational group was assigned to adjacent lanes. The proximity meant that advanced participants could observe the recreational shooters, and vice versa. "Remember, this is precision shooting under simulated stress conditions," Williams explained to his advanced students. "You'll have 60 seconds to engage 5 targets at varying distances. Accuracy and speed both matter." The advanced participants performed admirably, with most achieving scores in the 70s and 80s. Detective Morrison managed 87%, while Captain Chen reached 90% accuracy. "Excellent work," Williams announced. "These scores represent genuinely elite-level performance under pressure." It was at this moment that Sandra made what seemed like an innocent suggestion to her recreational group. "Would anyone like to try the same course of fire? Just for fun? To see how you do with advanced techniques?" Several recreational participants attempted the challenge with predictable results. Scores in the 40s and 50s, respectable for their experience level, but clearly demonstrating the gap between recreational and advanced capabilities. Then, Anya stepped up to the line. The first shot rang out before anyone was fully paying attention. Clean hit, center mass on the first target. The second shot followed with mechanical precision, then the third, fourth, and fifth. When the timer stopped, Anya had engaged all 5 targets in 47 seconds with 94% accuracy. The silence that followed was deafening. Williams walked to Anya's lane to examine her target personally, his expression shifting from mild curiosity to intense scrutiny. The pattern of shots demonstrated not just accuracy, but advanced technique. Proper sight alignment, controlled breathing, smooth trigger control, skills that typically required months of elite-level instruction to develop. "Ms. Hernandez," Williams said, his voice carrying across both groups, "that was exceptional shooting. Where exactly did you develop these skills?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Around her, both recreational and advanced participants waited for an explanation that would make sense of what they'd just witnessed. How does a pet store owner with no formal training outperform experienced law enforcement and military personnel? "I practice regularly," Anya replied, her voice steady despite the growing attention. "I take shooting seriously as a hobby." "What kind of practice?" Williams pressed. "Where do you train? Who provides instruction?" The interrogation continued for several minutes, with Williams probing for details about Anya's background that might explain her extraordinary performance. His questions carried an edge of suspicion that made other participants increasingly uncomfortable. "Look, it's not that unusual for someone to be naturally gifted," Sandra interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Anya's been very dedicated to the program." But Williams wasn't satisfied with explanations about natural talent or dedication. Elite-level shooting performance required specific training, systematic skill development, access to proper equipment, and instruction. It didn't emerge spontaneously from casual practice. The incident prompted conversations that extended far beyond the shooting range. Williams discussed his concerns with other instructors, questioning how someone with supposedly limited experience could demonstrate capabilities that exceeded many of their advanced students. "There's something inconsistent about her background," Williams told Master Instructor Rodriguez during their evening debrief. Nobody develops that level of precision without serious training. Either she lied on her application, or she's had access to instruction that she's not disclosing. The suspicion spread through the Academy's staff and into the advanced program participants. Detective Morrison mentioned the incident to his partner, who worked security for several shooting competitions. Captain Chen discussed it with her brother, who had connections throughout the regional competitive shooting community. Has anyone heard of an Anya Hernandez in competitive circles? Became a common question in conversations that Anya wasn't part of, but that she could sense happening around her. The scrutiny intensified during the following week's sessions. Williams began appearing at recreational program training, ostensibly to observe teaching techniques but clearly focused on evaluating Anya's performance. Other advanced program instructors found reasons to visit Sandra's sessions, watching with the kind of attention typically reserved for potential security threats. "You're making people nervous," Sandra told Anya privately after a particularly intense session where 3 different instructors had observed her shooting. "Your performance is exceptional, but it's raising questions about whether recreational shooting is the right program for you." The statement carried implications that Anya understood immediately. Questions about her placement meant questions about her honesty, her background, her reasons for being at Precision Valley Academy. The exceptional capabilities she'd worked years to develop were becoming a source of suspicion rather than recognition. "What are you suggesting?" Anya asked. "I'm suggesting that maybe you should consider whether this program is meeting your needs. If you have advanced training that qualifies you for the elite program, it might be better for everyone if you pursued that option instead." But Anya knew that the elite program remained closed to her. Her background hadn't changed, her credentials hadn't improved, and Williams had made it clear that recreational shooting was where she belonged, regardless of her capabilities. The irony was perfect and infuriating. She was too skilled for recreational shooting, but not qualified for advanced training. Too capable for where they'd placed her, but not credentialed for where she belonged. Her excellence had become a problem rather than an asset. That evening, Victor listened to her frustrated account of the growing suspicion with the patient attention of someone who had seen similar situations before. "So now they wonder if you are spy, or liar, or security threat," he said with dry amusement, "because you shoot too well for pet store owner." "It's not funny, Victor. They're treating me like I've done something wrong by being better than they expected." "You have done something wrong," Victor replied seriously. "You have challenged their assumptions about who can possess exceptional capabilities. This makes them uncomfortable because it means their system for evaluating people is flawed." As they cleaned equipment after another demanding training session, Victor offered perspective that Anya hadn't considered. Let them be suspicious. Let them wonder. In 4 weeks, you will have opportunity to show them exactly how wrong their assumptions have been. The tournament was approaching, and with it, the chance to transform suspicion into undeniable recognition. The confrontation came on a Friday afternoon when Anya least expected it. She'd just finished the recreational program's weekly session and was packing her equipment when Master Instructor Williams approached with 2 other Academy officials she didn't recognize. "Miss Hernandez, we need to speak with you privately," Williams said, his tone carrying the weight of official business. "Please come to the conference room." The walk down the Academy's main hallway felt like a march to judgment. Other participants and instructors paused their conversations to watch as Anya was escorted to a room she'd never entered before, one typically reserved for serious administrative matters. Inside the conference room, 3 men waited around a polished table covered with documents. Williams took his seat alongside Director Frank Morrison and Security Chief David Lee, creating a tribunal that made Anya feel like she was facing court-martial proceedings. "Please, sit down," Director Morrison said, his voice professionally courteous but unmistakably serious. "We need to discuss some inconsistencies we've discovered regarding your background and performance." Anya took the offered chair, her hands steady despite the adrenaline beginning to flood her system. After weeks of growing suspicion and whispered conversations, the moment of direct confrontation had finally arrived. "Ms. Hernandez," Williams began, consulting a file that she assumed contained everything the Academy knew about her. "Your performance in the recreational program has been exceptional. Consistently exceptional in ways that raise questions about the accuracy of your stated experience level." Security Chief Lee leaned forward, his expression carrying the skepticism of someone trained to identify deception. We've run background checks, contacted shooting ranges throughout the region, spoken with competitive shooting organizations. Nobody has any record of Anya Hernandez participating in formal training programs. Because I haven't participated in formal programs, Anya replied honestly. I've always trained privately. Where? Williams asked immediately. With whom? Using what equipment? The questions came rapidly, designed to pressure her into revealing details that might expose inconsistencies in her story. They wanted to know about her training locations, her instructors, her access to equipment that could produce the level of skill she demonstrated. I train at a private range with a retired instructor, Anya said, keeping her response deliberately vague. Someone who prefers to avoid publicity. We'll need contact information for this instructor, Director Morrison stated, for verification purposes. Anya felt the trap closing around her. Victor had specifically requested anonymity, had chosen his isolated mountain location precisely to avoid the kind of official scrutiny that this conversation would inevitably bring. Revealing his identity and location would violate his trust and potentially expose him to unwanted attention from law enforcement and regulatory officials. I don't think that's necessary, she replied. My performance should speak for itself. Your performance is exactly the problem, Williams said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Nobody develops elite-level shooting capabilities without documented training. Either you're lying about your background, or you've had access to instruction that you're deliberately concealing. Security Chief Lee opened a different folder, one that made Anya's stomach clench with recognition. We've also discovered some interesting information about your recent activities. Did you know that purchasing large quantities of ammunition requires certain reporting procedures? The question revealed how deeply they'd investigated her background. Victor's training had required substantial amounts of ammunition, purchases that had apparently triggered attention from people whose job it was to notice unusual patterns. Shooting sports require practice, Anya said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Practice requires ammunition. 6,000 rounds over the past 8 months, Lee continued, reading from his file. That's more than most recreational shooters use in several years. It's also more than many law enforcement officers use for annual qualification. The numbers laid out her secret training program in stark statistical terms. Evidence of the systematic, intensive preparation that had developed her exceptional capabilities, but that existed completely outside any official program or institution. We're also curious about some of your equipment purchases, Williams added. High-end optics, precision ammunition, specialized gear that costs more than most people spend on cars. Where does a pet store owner get the money for that kind of investment? Director Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying Anya with eyes that had evaluated thousands of applications and candidates. Ms. Hernandez, we're not accusing you of anything illegal, but we have serious concerns about the accuracy of your application and the nature of your training background. What exactly are you suggesting? Anya asked, though she already knew where this conversation was heading. We're suggesting that you've misrepresented your qualifications and experience level, Williams replied bluntly, either intentionally or through omission. The recreational program is designed for genuine beginners, not for someone with obviously advanced training. Security Chief Lee consulted his notes again. We've also received reports that you've been asking detailed questions about our advanced program curriculum, competitive shooting opportunities, and masterclass training options. Behavior that suggests your goals extend far beyond recreational shooting. The accusation stung because it was partially true. Anya had been interested in opportunities beyond the recreational program, had hoped that her performance might open doors to more challenging training, but her questions had been interpreted as deception rather than ambition. I'm interested in improving my skills, she said. Is that inappropriate? It's inappropriate when it's based on misrepresentation, Morrison replied. We have limited resources and carefully structured programs. When someone gains access through false pretenses, it affects our ability to serve other students appropriately. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with the three officials pressing for details about her training that Anya couldn't provide without betraying Victor's trust. They wanted documentation she didn't have, credentials she'd never pursued, explanations for capabilities that had been developed outside any system they recognized or understood. Finally, Director Morrison delivered the verdict that Anya had seen coming throughout the interrogation. Ms. Hernandez, we're suspending your participation in the recreational program pending further investigation into your background and qualifications. What does that mean? Anya asked, though she suspected she already knew. It means you're no longer welcome at Precision Valley Academy until we can verify the accuracy of your application and resolve questions about your training background, Williams explained. If you've been honest about your experience level, you should have no problem providing the documentation we've requested. Quote, as Anya left the conference room, she felt the familiar weight of being judged and found wanting, not for lack of ability, but for failing to fit into categories that others found comfortable. Her exceptional performance had been treated as evidence of deception rather than dedication. The suspension meant losing access to facilities, training opportunities, and most importantly, the upcoming tournament that would have provided her first chance to compete against the advanced program participants who had been deemed more qualified than her. She walked to her car through a gauntlet of curious stares from other Academy participants who had obviously heard about the investigation. Some looked sympathetic, others skeptical, most simply confused about what had really happened to the quiet pet store owner who shot better than anyone expected. That evening, Victor listened to her account of the suspension with the grim satisfaction of someone whose cynical expectations had been confirmed. So, he said as they sat in his workshop surrounded by equipment that had created the capabilities now being questioned, they punish you for being too good at what they teach. Very American solution to problem of excellence. What am I supposed to do now? Anya asked. They've cut off my access to competition, to training opportunities, to everything I was working toward. Victor smiled with the expression of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Now you stop trying to fit into their system and start building your own. 3 days after her suspension from Precision Valley Academy, Anya was restocking fish food at Paws and Claws when her phone buzzed with an urgent call from Sandra, the recreational program instructor. Anya, thank God you answered. Sandra's voice was tight with stress. We have an emergency situation and I need your help. The story tumbled out in fragments. A bus carrying 12 recreational program participants had broken down on Highway 285 while returning from a field training exercise at a remote outdoor range. They were stranded in a mountainous area with limited cell coverage, but that wasn't the real problem. There's been a shooting incident at the Pine Ridge shooting competition, Sandra continued, her voice barely controlled. Someone opened fire during the awards ceremony. Multiple casualties, and they've taken hostages inside the main building. Anya's blood ran cold. Pine Ridge was the state's premier competitive shooting facility, hosting events that drew marksmen from across the region. Many of Precision Valley's advanced program participants competed there regularly. The situation gets worse, Sandra said. The shooter has demanded to speak with someone who understands precision shooting at the highest level. Local law enforcement is out of their depth, and they're asking for assistance from anyone with elite-level marksmanship training. What does this have to do with me? Anya asked, though she was beginning to understand. The FBI's crisis response team is en route, but they won't arrive for 2 hours. Local SWAT has the building surrounded, but they need someone who can make an impossible shot if negotiations fail, someone who can engage a target at 300 meters through a window no bigger than 18 inches, with hostages in the immediate area. The specifications made Anya's breath catch. It was exactly the kind of precision shooting that Victor had been training her for. The advanced techniques that Precision Valley's recreational program would never have taught her. They've contacted every shooting instructor and competitive marksman within 50 miles, Sandra continued. Most are either unavailable or lack the specific skills needed for this situation. Williams recommended you, despite your suspension. Williams recommended me? He said that regardless of questions about your background, your demonstrated accuracy under pressure makes you the best option currently available. This isn't about Academy politics, Anya. This is about saving lives. Through the pet store's front window, Anya could see the normal afternoon bustle of Boulder's downtown district. Families shopping, tourists browsing, the peaceful routine of a community that had no idea a crisis was unfolding in the mountains. In 2 hours, people might die because no one with the necessary skills was available to help. What exactly are they asking me to do, she said, though she already knew. Drive to Pine Ridge immediately and assist the tactical team. They need someone who can make precision shots that local law enforcement simply isn't trained for. Someone who won't hesitate under pressure. Anya closed her eyes, seeing Victor's training range, feeling the weight of the custom rifle he'd taught her to master. Every evening session had been preparation for scenarios she'd hoped never to encounter. But precision shooting wasn't just about competition scores and perfect targets. Sometimes it was about protecting innocent people from those who would do them harm. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, she said. The drive to Pine Ridge took her through mountain roads she'd traveled countless times on the way to Victor's range. But this time, instead of training equipment, her trunk contained the specialized gear that Victor had insisted she maintain for situations that require absolute precision. Her phone rang as she navigated the winding highway. Victor's voice was calm but serious. "I heard about Pine Ridge on police scanner. You are going?" "Yes. They need someone who can make shots that local law enforcement can't handle." "Good. You are ready for this. Remember breathing. Remember wind calculations. Remember that precision shooting is about saving lives, not taking them." "Victor, what if I can't do it? What if I miss?" "You will not miss. I have watched you train for 2 years. You have capabilities that few people possess. Now you have chance to use them for purpose that matters." The Pine Ridge facility was surrounded by emergency vehicles when Anya arrived. Police cars, ambulances, FBI mobile command units, and tactical teams created a perimeter around the main building where the crisis was unfolding. The scene was controlled chaos, with law enforcement officials coordinating response strategies while paramedics prepared for casualties. SWAT Commander Riley met her at the perimeter checkpoint, his face grim with the weight of responsibility for resolving a situation that had already claimed 3 lives. "You're Hernandez," he asked, studying her with obvious skepticism. "You're younger than I expected. Can you brief me on the tactical situation?" Anya replied, keeping her voice professional despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Riley led her to the mobile command center, where thermal imaging and building schematics displayed the current situation. The shooter had barricaded himself in the facility's main conference room with 4 hostages, positioned near windows that provided clear sightlines to potential sniper positions. "The problem is the angle," Riley explained, pointing to the building layout. "Our best shooting position is from that ridge, but it's 300 meters away with significant wind exposure. The target window is only 18 inches wide, and any miss could hit hostages." Quote, Anya studied the tactical display, her mind automatically calculating wind patterns, bullet drop, and sight adjustments. The shot was difficult, but not impossible, especially with the equipment Victor had taught her to use. "What are the current wind conditions?" she asked. "Variable, gusting between 8 and 12 knots from the southwest. Visibility is good, but the light is fading." Riley continued his briefing, but Anya was already planning the shot sequence that might save 4 innocent lives. Every technique Victor had taught her, every hour of practice at extreme distances, every lesson about precision under pressure had been preparation for this moment. "Ma'am," Riley said, his tone carrying new respect, "if you can make this shot, you'll save 4 people who are going to die if we wait for FBI snipers." Anya looked at the building where lives hung in the balance, then at the ridge where she would either prove Victor's training had prepared her for the ultimate test or fail when it mattered most. "Show me the shooting position," she said. The shooting position was everything Commander Riley had described, and worse. A rocky outcrop, 300 meters from the target building, exposed to variable mountain winds and positioned at an angle that made the shot technically possible but practically nightmarish. Anya lay prone behind Victor's custom rifle, studying the target window through her scope while law enforcement officials maintained radio contact with the negotiation team. The shooter's silhouette was visible intermittently, but always positioned near the hostages who huddled in terror against the conference room's far wall. "Hernandez, what's your assessment?" Riley's voice crackled through her earpiece. Through the scope, Anya could see everything with crystalline clarity. The shooter, a man in his 40s, whose face showed the desperate determination of someone with nothing left to lose. The 4 hostages, including a teenage girl who couldn't stop crying, and an elderly man who appeared to be injured from the initial attack. "I have a clear sight picture when he moves to the window," she reported, "but the wind conditions are challenging, and the margin for error is essentially 0. What she didn't say was that the shot was at the absolute limit of what precision shooting could accomplish. Even with perfect conditions, hitting an 18-inch target at 300 meters required capabilities that few marksmen possessed, With gusting winds and fading light, it became the kind of shot that separated good shooters from exceptional ones. Negotiator says he's becoming more agitated, Riley updated, threatening to start executing hostages in 15 minutes if his demands aren't met. Anya's radio crackled with another voice, one she recognized immediately. Williams from Precision Valley Academy had arrived on scene and was now part of the tactical team consultation. Hernandez, this is Williams. I need you to honestly assess whether you can make this shot. If there's any doubt about your capabilities, we need to know now. The question hung in the mountain air like a challenge. Williams was asking her to evaluate not just the technical difficulty of the shot, but her own ability to perform under pressure that far exceeded anything she'd experienced during training. Through her scope, Anya watched the shooter pace near the window, his agitation increasing with each radio transmission from the negotiation team. Time was running out, and every second of delay brought the hostages closer to death. I can make the shot, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was committing to attempt. But even as she spoke, Anya knew that making the shot would forever change how people viewed her capabilities. Success would validate everything Victor had taught her, but would also expose the extent of her hidden training. Failure would result in innocent deaths and confirm every doubt about her qualifications. Hernandez, Williams' voice returned, now carrying a tone she'd never heard from him before. If you're certain, you have authorization to engage when ready. The words represented more than tactical permission. They were acknowledgement that the pet store owner who had been suspended for misrepresenting her qualifications was now being trusted with a responsibility that could save or cost multiple lives. Anya adjusted her scope for wind and distance, her breathing falling into the controlled rhythm that Victor had drilled into her through thousands of practice shots. Around her, the law enforcement team maintained radio silence, understanding that the next few minutes would determine the outcome of a crisis that had already claimed too many victims. Through her earpiece, she could hear fragments of the ongoing negotiation. The shooter was becoming increasingly unstable, his demands more erratic, his threats more specific. The teenage hostage was no longer crying, but had fallen into the kind of shocked silence that preceded complete psychological breakdown. Wind is gusting 12 knots, reported the spotter positioned beside her. Angle is southwest at approximately 30 degrees. Anya made minute adjustments to her aim, compensating for environmental factors that would push her bullet off target by inches at this distance. The calculations were complex, requiring her to account for air pressure, temperature, humidity, and the specific ballistic characteristics of her ammunition. Target is moving to window position, the spotter continued. You have a clear shot. Through her scope, Anya could see the shooter's profile as he positioned himself near the window, close enough to the hostages that any miss could prove fatal. His body language showed escalating agitation, the kind of desperation that preceded violence against innocent people. Hernandez, you are authorized to engage. Riley's voice was calm but urgent. Take the shot when ready. Anya's finger found the trigger as her breathing settled into the final rhythm before firing. Every hour of training with Victor, every shot at impossible distances, every lesson about precision under pressure had prepared her for this moment. The shot that would either save 4 lives or haunt her forever. But as her finger began to apply pressure to the trigger, her radio crackled with an update that changed everything. Hold fire, came the urgent voice of the negotiation team leader. Shooter is releasing 1 hostage. Repeat, 1 hostage is being released. Through her scope, Anya watched as the teenage girl stumbled toward the conference room door, her face streaked with tears but her movement indicating she was unharmed. The shooter remained positioned near the window, but his posture suggested possible willingness to negotiate further releases. Negotiator believes we may be able to resolve this without force, Riley's voice updated. Maintain position but hold fire pending further developments. Anya remained motionless behind her rifle, finger poised over the trigger, ready to take a shot that might still become necessary if negotiations failed. The weight of 4 lives rested on her ability to react instantly if the situation deteriorated. Minutes passed like hours as negotiators worked to secure the release of additional hostages. Through her scope, Anya maintained constant visual contact with the shooter, ready to engage if he showed any sign of violence toward the remaining 3 victims. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the radio crackled with the update everyone had been hoping for. All hostages released. Shooter is surrendering. Tactical teams moving in for arrest. Anya slowly lifted her head from the scope, her hands trembling slightly as adrenaline began to ebb. She had been prepared to take a shot that would have tested every skill Victor had taught her, but the situation had resolved without requiring her to pull the trigger. Around her, law enforcement officials began the process of securing the scene and ensuring the safety of the released hostages. The crisis was over, but Anya knew that her role in its resolution would raise new questions about capabilities she could no longer keep hidden. The debriefing session took place in the Pine Ridge facility's administrative building an hour after the crisis had ended. Anya sat across from a table of officials whose expressions ranged from curious to openly amazed. Commander Riley, Master Instructor Williams, FBI Special Agent Sarah Collins, who had arrived with the Federal Response Team, and Director Morrison from Precision Valley Academy. Ms. Hernandez, Agent Collins began, consulting notes that detailed Anya's role in the tactical response. Your positioning and preparation were textbook perfect for the shot parameters we established. Where exactly did you receive training for precision shooting under tactical conditions? The question Anya had been dreading throughout the crisis had finally arrived. There was no way to explain her capabilities without revealing the extent of Victor's training program. The hidden range in the mountains. The thousands of rounds of practice that had prepared her for scenarios like this. I've been training privately for 2 years, she said, keeping her response as minimal as possible. With whom? Williams interjected, his tone carrying the same skepticism that had led to her suspension from the academy. We've investigated your background extensively. There's no record of formal tactical training. Agent Collins leaned forward, her FBI training evident in the systematic way she approached the questioning. Ms. Hernandez, the shot you were prepared to take required capabilities that are typically developed through military sniper training or elite competitive programs. Those aren't skills that emerge from casual recreational shooting. They also aren't skills that someone develops in secret without access to specialized equipment and expert instruction, Director Morrison added. We're back to the same questions that led to your suspension from our program. Anya felt the familiar frustration of being interrogated for possessing abilities that others couldn't explain or categorize. But this time, the stakes were different. Her performance during the crisis had saved lives and demonstrated capabilities that law enforcement needed. I understand your skepticism, she said, her voice gaining strength as she realized that secrecy was no longer protecting anyone. But my training background is less important than my demonstrated ability to perform when lives are at stake. Commander Riley, who had witnessed her preparation and positioning during the crisis, spoke up for the first time. I can tell you that her tactical awareness and technical preparation were exceptional. She calculated wind conditions, adjusted for environmental factors, and maintained perfect position discipline under extreme pressure. Which brings us to our dilemma, Agent Collins said. We have someone with obviously elite-level capabilities who claims to have developed them through private training that can't be verified or documented. In law enforcement circles, that raises significant questions. Williams opened a file that Anya recognized as her academy records. Your suspension from Precision Valley was based on concerns about misrepresentation and undisclosed training background. Today's events have confirmed that our suspicions were justified. Your suspicions were that I was more capable than my background suggested, Anya replied, her patience finally reaching its limit. Today confirmed that you were right to be suspicious, but wrong to treat those capabilities as a problem rather than an asset. The statement created an uncomfortable silence around the table. Everyone present understood that Anya's exceptional performance had exposed flaws in how the shooting community evaluated and utilized talent. Director Morrison cleared his throat. Ms. Hernandez, we're prepared to offer you immediate reinstatement in our advanced program, with full access to master-level training and competition opportunities. Based on what? Anya asked. My capabilities haven't changed since you suspended me 3 days ago. The only thing that's changed is that you've seen those capabilities demonstrated under conditions that matter. Agent Collins consulted her notes again. There's another consideration. The FBI's Tactical Training Division is always looking for individuals with exceptional marksmanship abilities. Your performance today suggests you might be qualified for specialized training programs. The offers kept coming, each representing opportunities that had been unavailable when she was just a pet store owner seeking access to advanced training. Now that her abilities had been demonstrated under crisis conditions, institutions that had previously excluded her were competing for her attention. "I appreciate the offers," Anya said, standing to indicate that the meeting was ending, "but I need to consider what I actually want to do with these capabilities." As she walked toward the door, Williams called after her, "Ms. Hernandez, you can't just walk away from this. Your skills represent a significant resource that could benefit law enforcement, competitive shooting, military applications. You have obligations." Anya turned back to face the table of officials who had suddenly discovered her value. "For 2 years, I've been developing these capabilities on my own time, with my own resources, according to my own standards. Nobody expressed interest in my potential until you needed me to take a shot that could save lives." "That's not fair," Morrison protested. "Our programs have established criteria for admission and advancement. You didn't meet those criteria. Your criteria excluded someone who was capable of making a shot that your advanced program graduates couldn't handle," Anya replied. "Maybe the problem isn't with my qualifications. Maybe the problem is with your criteria." The drive back to Boulder gave Anya time to process the magnitude of what had changed in a single afternoon. Her hidden capabilities were no longer hidden. Her secret training relationship with Victor would inevitably be discovered and scrutinized. Her carefully maintained life as an unassuming pet store owner was over. But more importantly, she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. By accepting the responsibility to take a shot that could save lives, she had acknowledged that her capabilities carried obligations that extended beyond personal satisfaction or competitive achievement. Her phone rang as she pulled into the parking space behind Paws and Claws. Victor's number appeared on the screen. "You did not have to take shot," he said without preamble, "but you were ready to take shot. This means training is complete." "What happens now?" Anya asked. "Now you decide who you want to be. Person who hides exceptional capabilities to make others comfortable, or person who uses those capabilities to make difference in world." That evening, as Anya fed the animals in her pet store and attempted to return to her normal routine, she knew that normal no longer existed. The phone had been ringing constantly with calls from law enforcement agencies, competitive shooting organizations, and training facilities. Her involvement in the Pine Ridge crisis had made her abilities public knowledge. Tomorrow, she would have to decide whether to accept the opportunities that were suddenly available, or to continue protecting the privacy that had allowed her to develop those abilities in secret. But tonight, for the last time, she was simply Anya Hernandez, pet store owner, whose most challenging responsibility was ensuring that Pablo the cockatiel received his evening treats on schedule. The decision came to Anya at 3 a.m. as she lay awake listening to the familiar sounds of her apartment above the pet store. The soft scratching of hamsters in their wheels, the gentle bubbling of aquarium filters, the occasional chirp from Pablo, who suffered from insomnia as much as she did. For 4 years, these sounds had represented the peaceful simplicity of a life where her greatest challenge was convincing customers that goldfish actually required more care than most people assumed. But that life had ended the moment she'd positioned herself behind a rifle at Pine Ridge, prepared to take a shot that could save innocent lives. There was no returning to the comfortable anonymity of being underestimated when her capabilities had been demonstrated under conditions that mattered. By dawn, she had made her choice. The email she sent to Agent Collins was brief and direct. "I'm interested in discussing specialized training opportunities with the FBI Tactical Division. However, I have conditions that we'll need to address before I can commit to any program." The response came within an hour, despite the early morning timing. Collins wanted to meet immediately to discuss Anya's requirements and the Bureau's needs for precision marksmen with her demonstrated capabilities. But first, there was someone else who deserved to know about her decision. Victor's mountain range looked different in the morning light as Anya drove the familiar route for what might be the last time as simply his student. For 2 years, this had been her sanctuary, the place where she could develop capabilities that existed outside the judgments and limitations of the everyday world. She found Victor in his workshop, methodically cleaning the custom rifle that had been prepared for her use at Pine Ridge. His weathered hands moved with the same precision he'd taught her to apply to shooting, each motion deliberate and efficient. "You have decided," he said, without looking up from his work. "I can see it in your face." "The FBI wants to offer me specialized training," Anya said. "Advanced tactical programs that could lead to roles I never imagined possible." "And you want this?" It was a question that cut to the heart of everything she'd been wrestling with since the crisis at Pine Ridge. Did she want to be a tactical specialist? To use her abilities in service of law enforcement objectives that she might not always agree with? Or was there another path that would allow her to utilize her capabilities while maintaining her independence? "I want to be excellent at something that matters," she replied. "For 2 years, you've taught me skills that most people will never possess. Yesterday, those skills could have saved lives. That feels like purpose." Victor nodded slowly, finally looking up from the rifle to study her with eyes that had seen her transform from curious beginner to exceptional marksman. "FBI training will make you better technically, but it will also make you part of system with obligations and restrictions you cannot foresee. What's the alternative? Continue hiding my capabilities, pretend that what happened yesterday doesn't change anything. Alternative is to become independent specialist. Someone who chooses when and how to use exceptional capabilities, rather than someone who follows orders about when capabilities are needed." The suggestion opened possibilities that Anya hadn't considered. Instead of joining an existing organization with established protocols and limitations, she could potentially create her own path. Offer specialized services to law enforcement agencies, competitive shooting programs, or security organizations that needed capabilities beyond what their regular personnel possessed. "You think that's possible?" Quote. Victor smiled, the expression carrying more warmth than she'd ever seen from him. "You just spent 2 years developing elite-level capabilities in secret, while running successful business and maintaining normal life. If you can do that, you can do anything." The conversation continued for 2 hours, with Victor outlining possibilities that had never occurred to Anya. Independent consulting for law enforcement agencies that needed specialized marksmanship support. Training programs for competitive shooters who wanted to reach elite levels. Private security work for organizations that required absolute precision under pressure. Most importantly, Victor concluded, you maintain control over when and how you use capabilities. You choose missions that align with your values, rather than accepting whatever assignments bureaucracy provides. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. Starting her own specialized consulting practice would require business skills she'd never developed, marketing capabilities she'd never needed, and the confidence to present herself as an expert in a field dominated by people with military and law enforcement backgrounds. But it would also allow her to remain true to the independence that had characterized her development as a marksman. She had learned these skills on her own terms, according to her own standards, without seeking permission or approval from institutions that would have excluded her. 3 days later, Anya sat in the conference room at the FBI field office in Denver, facing Agent Collins and 2 other federal officials, whose credentials suggested they represented some of the most elite tactical training programs in the country. "Ms. Hernandez," Collins began, "we're prepared to offer you immediate entry into our precision marksmanship program, with accelerated advancement based on your demonstrated capabilities." The offer was everything she might have hoped for 6 months earlier. Access to the most advanced training available, equipment that surpassed even Victor's impressive collection, opportunities to work alongside the finest tactical specialists in law enforcement. "I appreciate the offer," Anya replied, "but I've decided to pursue a different path." The explanation that followed detailed her plan to establish an independent consulting practice, offering specialized marksmanship services to law enforcement agencies that needed capabilities beyond their regular personnel. Training programs for competitive shooters seeking elite-level instruction. Precision shooting support for security operations that required absolute accuracy under pressure. "You're turning down the FBI?" Agent Collins asked, her expression showing genuine confusion. "For what, essentially, freelance work?" "I'm choosing independence over institutional constraints," Anya replied. "My capabilities were developed outside traditional systems. I believe they can be most effectively utilized the same way." The meeting ended with Agent Collins providing her contact information for future consultation opportunities. The FBI would be interested in contracting her services for situations that required her specific capabilities, even if she chose not to become a federal employee. Driving back to Boulder through the afternoon mountain light, Anya reflected on the magnitude of what she was attempting. Starting a specialized consulting practice would require her to market capabilities that most people wouldn't understand or believe until they were demonstrated. But she had spent 2 years proving to herself that exceptional achievement was possible through dedication and independent effort. Now she would discover whether those same principles could transform hidden capabilities into a career that mattered. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor. First consultation client called. Local police department needs training for precision shooting competition. Interested? Anya smiled as she typed her response. Send me the details. The solo journey was beginning. 6 weeks after establishing Hernandez Precision Consulting, Anya received the call that would define her new career. Chief Detective Raymond Torres from the Colorado State Police Tactical Division needed someone who could make shots that his regular snipers couldn't handle. We've got a situation, Torres explained during their phone conversation. Armed suspect barricaded in a warehouse holding 2 federal agents hostage. The problem is the geometry. We need someone who can engage targets at 400 meters through industrial glass, with wind conditions that are making our guys nervous. The job parameters immediately caught Anya's attention. 400 meters was at the edge of what most law enforcement snipers trained for, and shooting through industrial glass added complications that required advanced understanding of ballistics and trajectory deviation. What's the timeline? Anya asked, already mentally preparing for the most challenging assignment of her consulting career. You need to be here in 2 hours. The federal agents have been held for 6 hours already, and intelligence suggests the suspect is becoming increasingly unstable. The drive to the incident location took Anya through industrial Denver to a warehouse complex, where tactical vehicles had established a perimeter around a building that looked like every other storage facility in the area. But the concentration of law enforcement personnel and specialized equipment indicated this was anything but routine. Detective Torres met her at the command vehicle, his expression showing the stress of someone responsible for resolving a situation that had already gone on too long. Ms. Hernandez, thank you for coming. I'll be honest, we're at the limit of what our team can handle. The tactical briefing revealed why Torres had needed outside assistance. The suspect had positioned himself on the warehouse's second floor, with clear sightlines to the surrounding area but protected by industrial glass that would deflect standard police sniper rounds. The hostages were visible through thermal imaging, but any attempt at rescue required neutralizing the threat from a distance that exceeded local capabilities. Our best shooting position is from that water tower, Torres explained, pointing to a structure that rose above the warehouse complex. But it's 380 meters away, and the wind conditions have been variable all day. Anya studied the tactical display while calculating the shot parameters in her mind. The distance was manageable with proper equipment, but shooting through industrial glass would require specialized ammunition and precise understanding of how the barrier would affect bullet trajectory. I'll need to examine the shooting position and assess the environmental conditions, she said. What type of glass are we dealing with? The next hour was spent in detailed preparation that demonstrated why Victor's training had been so comprehensive. Anya calculated wind drift using equipment that most law enforcement agencies didn't possess, selected specialized ammunition designed for barrier penetration, and established backup positions in case the primary shot became unavailable. Your preparation is remarkable, observed Agent Sarah Mitchell from the FBI tactical team. Most snipers would have taken the shot 20 minutes ago, based on basic calculations. Quote, most snipers don't hit targets at this distance through industrial barriers, Anya replied, continuing her methodical setup process. Precision shooting requires precision preparation. The shooting position on the water tower provided clear visibility to the warehouse, but also exposed Anya to the variable wind conditions that had been challenging law enforcement snipers throughout the day. Through her scope, she could see the suspect moving near the windows, his agitation increasing as negotiation attempts continued to fail. Thermal imaging shows both hostages are still alive but showing signs of distress, came the update through her earpiece. Medical team believes we're running out of time. Anya adjusted her scope for the specific environmental conditions, accounting for air pressure, temperature, humidity, and the complex ballistics of shooting through industrial glass. The calculations were more complex than anything she'd encountered during training, requiring her to synthesize knowledge from dozens of different technical disciplines. I have a clear shot when the suspect moves to the east window, she reported. Glass penetration will cause approximately 2 inches of deviation at this distance, but the trajectory remains viable. Through her scope, she watched as the suspect became increasingly agitated, his movements suggesting that the situation was approaching a crisis point. The negotiation team reported that he was making threats against the hostages, demanding concessions that law enforcement couldn't provide. "Hernandez, you are authorized to engage when ready." Torres's voice was calm but urgent. Both hostages appeared to be in immediate danger. Anya's breathing settled into the controlled rhythm that Victor had taught her, her finger finding the trigger as environmental calculations crystallized into a single moment of absolute focus. The shot that would either validate 2 years of training or demonstrate the limits of precision shooting under real-world conditions. Through her scope, the suspect moved into perfect position near the window, his profile clear despite the barrier of industrial glass that separated him from justice. Anya made final adjustments for wind and distance, her mind calculating trajectory with the precision of a computer and the intuition of an artist. The shot that followed was everything Victor had trained her for, and everything she had hoped never to need. The rifle's report echoed across the warehouse complex like thunder, followed by 7 seconds of absolute silence that seemed to stretch into eternity. Through her scope, Anya watched the industrial glass spiderweb around the impact point, the specialized round penetrating the barrier exactly as her calculations had predicted. The suspect dropped immediately, his weapon clattering across the warehouse floor as tactical teams moved in to secure the hostages. But Anya remained motionless behind her rifle, waiting for confirmation that the shot had achieved its intended purpose without collateral damage. "Target down, hostages secure," came the voice through her earpiece. "Both federal agents are alive and responsive. Medical team is moving in now." Detective Torres climbed the water tower to personally verify what his tactical team was reporting through radio communications. His expression showed the amazement of someone who had witnessed shooting that exceeded his previous understanding of what was possible under field conditions. "That was a 380-meter shot through industrial glass in variable wind conditions," he said, studying Anya with new respect. "I've worked with military snipers, FBI specialists, competitive marksmen from around the country. None of them would have attempted that shot." "None of them had Victor's training," Anya replied, beginning the methodical process of securing her equipment. The debriefing session took place in the mobile command center, while paramedics attended to the rescued federal agents. Agent Mitchell, who had observed Anya's preparation and execution of the shot, documented performance details that would become part of law enforcement training materials. "The precision of your environmental calculations was exceptional," Mitchell noted. "But what impressed me most was your patience during the preparation phase. Most shooters would have rushed the setup under these time pressures." Chief Torres nodded in agreement. "Your methodical approach to what everyone else saw as an emergency situation probably saved those agents' lives. If you'd taken the shot without proper preparation, you might have missed or hit the glass at the wrong angle." The aftermath of the warehouse incident transformed Anya's consulting practice from an experimental venture into the most sought-after precision shooting service in the region. Within a week, she received requests from law enforcement agencies across 3 states, each describing situations that required capabilities beyond their regular personnel. The FBI's Tactical Training Division contacted her about developing specialized curriculum for precision shooting through barriers. The DEA wanted consultation on equipment selection for long-range surveillance operations. State police departments throughout the Mountain West requested training programs for their tactical teams. "You've created something that didn't exist before," Victor observed during one of their evening conversations at his mountain range. "Independent specialists who can provide capabilities that institutions need but cannot develop internally." More importantly, the warehouse incident had demonstrated that Anya's skills could be utilized in ways that aligned with her values while maintaining her independence. She could choose assignments that involved protecting innocent people, developing training programs that improved law enforcement capabilities, and consulting on equipment selection that enhanced public safety. But the most satisfying outcome was the recognition that came from unexpected sources. Master Instructor Williams called to offer a formal apology for the Academy's handling of her application, acknowledging that their evaluation criteria had failed to recognize exceptional talent. "Your performance has forced us to reconsider how we assess candidates," Williams admitted. "We're implementing new evaluation procedures that focus on demonstrated capability rather than conventional credentials." Director Morrison went further, offering Anya a position as head instructor for a new advanced program, specifically designed for students whose backgrounds didn't fit traditional categories. The Academy wanted to create pathways for exceptional talent, regardless of how or where those capabilities had been developed. 6 months ago, you suspended me for having abilities that didn't match my background, Anya reminded him. Now you want me to teach other people who might face the same prejudices. 6 months ago, we made a mistake, Morrison replied honestly. Your success has demonstrated that exceptional capabilities can emerge from unconventional sources. We want to ensure that future students with your potential receive the recognition and opportunities they deserve. The offers represented validation that Anya had spent years hoping to receive. Recognition from institutions that had previously excluded her. Opportunities to influence how talent was identified and developed. The chance to prevent other capable people from facing the same barriers she had encountered. But they also represented a return to institutional constraints that she had worked hard to escape. I appreciate the recognition, she told Morrison, but I've discovered that independence suits me better than institutional affiliation. My consulting practice allows me to help people while maintaining control over how my capabilities are utilized. The conversation ended with Morrison providing a standing offer for future collaboration, acknowledging that Anya's independent path had proven more successful than anything the Academy could have provided. That evening, as Anya updated her business records and prepared for the next day's consultation appointments, she reflected on the transformation that had occurred since the crisis at Pine Ridge. The pet store owner who had been deemed unqualified for advanced training was now consulting for federal agencies and training law enforcement specialists. Her phone buzzed with a text from Torres. Another situation developing, different state, similar parameters. Interested? Anya smiled as she reviewed the preliminary details. Another challenge that would test everything Victor had taught her. Another opportunity to prove that exceptional capabilities could emerge from the most unexpected sources. She typed her response. Send me the full briefing. I'll be there tomorrow. 1 year after the warehouse incident that established her reputation, Anya stood in the main conference room at Precision Valley Shooting Academy, addressing an audience that included law enforcement officials, competitive shooters, and military specialists from across the country. The woman who had once been relegated to recreational shooting programs was now delivering the keynote presentation at the Academy's annual Precision Marksmanship Symposium. Excellence doesn't always emerge from the sources we expect, she began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had proven capabilities that others had deemed impossible. Sometimes the most exceptional talent develops in secret, away from traditional institutions and evaluation systems. The audience included many faces that had become familiar over the past year. Detective Torres, who now contracted her services regularly for complex tactical situations. Agent Mitchell, who had incorporated Anya's training methods into FBI curriculum. Even Master Instructor Williams, who had become one of her strongest advocates after witnessing her capabilities under pressure. But the presentation wasn't just about her own journey from overlooked pet store owner to recognized specialist. It was about the systematic changes that her success had inspired throughout the precision shooting community. We've learned that conventional evaluation criteria often fail to identify exceptional potential, she continued. Background credentials, institutional affiliations, traditional training pathways. These factors can predict competence, but they cannot predict excellence. The Academy had implemented new assessment procedures that focused on demonstrated ability rather than conventional qualifications. Students were now evaluated based on their actual performance under pressure, their capacity for systematic improvement, and their understanding of precision shooting principles regardless of where or how they had acquired that knowledge. The changes had already produced remarkable results. A mechanic from rural Montana had demonstrated Olympic-level accuracy after years of secret practice. A nurse from Phoenix had developed tactical shooting capabilities that exceeded many law enforcement specialists. A retired teacher had created training methods that improved student performance beyond anything traditional instruction had achieved. Each of these individuals possessed exceptional capabilities that traditional evaluation systems would have missed or dismissed, Anya explained. They succeeded not because institutions recognized their potential, but because they recognized it themselves and developed it independently. Her consulting practice had evolved into something she hadn't originally envisioned. Beyond providing specialized services for law enforcement agencies, she now mentored individuals whose exceptional abilities existed outside conventional recognition systems. People who had developed remarkable capabilities in secret, but lacked the credentials or connections to gain access to advanced training opportunities. The goal isn't to replace traditional training institutions, she clarified. It's to create additional pathways for exceptional talent, regardless of how or where that talent emerges. Victor sat in the front row, his weathered face showing the pride of a teacher whose student had exceeded every expectation. At 83, he had finally agreed to formalize his instruction methods, working with Anya to document training techniques that had produced capabilities exceeding anything offered by conventional programs. "You have created something important," he had told her recently. "Not just business success, but change in how people think about what is possible when dedication meets opportunity." The presentation concluded with a demonstration that illustrated how far Anya had progressed since her first assessment at the academy. Using the same rifle and shooting from the same position where she had initially been deemed unsuitable for advanced training, she engaged targets at distances and under conditions that would challenge Olympic champions. The silence that followed her final shot was the same 7-second quiet that had marked her emergence as a recognized specialist. But this time the silence was filled with respect rather than disbelief, recognition rather than suspicion. Questions she asked, lowering her rifle and facing an audience that now understood why independent excellence had proven more effective than institutional conformity. The first question came from a young woman in the back of the room, someone whose small stature and quiet demeanor reminded Anya of herself 2 years earlier. "What advice would you give to someone who has capabilities that others don't recognize or understand?" Anya smiled, remembering the morning she had first arrived at this same academy carrying skills that no one believed she possessed. "Develop those capabilities to the highest level possible, regardless of whether others recognize their value," she replied. "Excellence eventually creates its own opportunities, but only if you're willing to pursue it without external validation." The symposium ended with announcements about new training programs, consultation opportunities, and partnerships between traditional institutions and independent specialists. The shooting community was evolving to accommodate talent that emerged from unconventional sources, creating pathways for excellence that had previously been blocked by institutional limitations. As attendees filed out of the conference room, many approached Anya with questions about consultation services, training opportunities, and collaboration possibilities. The pet store owner, who had once been suspended for having abilities that exceeded her credentials, was now one of the most respected specialists in the field. Her phone buzzed with a familiar notification. Another consultation request, this one from a federal agency, dealing with a situation that required precision shooting under extreme conditions. The kind of assignment that would have been impossible to imagine when she was counting hamster food and updating equipment manifests. But success had also brought unexpected challenges. Media attention that threatened the privacy she valued, commercial opportunities that could compromise her independence, institutional pressures to affiliate with organizations whose goals might not align with her values. "The hardest part about proving everyone wrong," she had told Victor recently, "is deciding what to do after you've succeeded." As the academy parking lot emptied and attendees departed for their home states, Anya reflected on the transformation that had occurred not just in her own life, but in the broader community that had initially dismissed her potential. The girl who had been too small to matter had become the specialist everyone called when situations required capabilities that conventional training couldn't provide. The pet store owner who had been deemed unqualified for advanced programs was now consulting for federal agencies and training elite marksmen. Most importantly, her success had created opportunities for others whose exceptional abilities existed outside traditional recognition systems. People who possessed remarkable capabilities but lacked the credentials or connections to gain access to advanced training. Her phone rang as she packed her equipment. Victor's voice carried the satisfaction of someone whose unconventional teaching methods had produced results that exceeded every prediction. "So," he said, "ready for tomorrow's training session? I have new challenges that will test everything you think you know about precision shooting." Anya smiled as she loaded her gear into the car that had carried her from overlooked amateur to recognized specialist. "Always ready, Victor. That's what you taught me." The drive back to Boulder took her past the same mountain roads where she had first discovered that exceptional capabilities could be developed independently of institutional approval. But now those roads led to a consulting practice that served law enforcement agencies, trained competitive shooters, and mentored individuals whose talents existed outside conventional recognition. The pet store still operated under her ownership, managed by employees who understood that their boss occasionally disappeared for days at a time to handle specialized consulting assignments. Pablo the cockatiel continued to require his evening treats. The tropical fish still needed temperature monitoring, and customers still sought advice about guinea pig nutrition. But everything had changed in ways that mattered most. The woman who had once hidden exceptional capabilities to avoid uncomfortable questions was now using those same abilities to save lives, train others, and prove that excellence could emerge from the most unexpected sources. Her phone buzzed with another consultation request as she pulled into the parking space behind Paws and Claws. This one from an international law enforcement agency dealing with a precision shooting challenge that would require everything Victor had taught her and capabilities she had yet to discover. Anya smiled as she typed her response. "Send me the details. I'll be there." The girl, who was just a pet store owner, had become the specialist everyone called when impossible shots needed to be made, and she was just getting started. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.